How does the IRS define a hobby? Hi, I'm Juliana, and I am an enrolled agent living in Texas. I have a master's in taxation, as well as a background of working at the IRS. I like to go over some of my experiences at the IRS, as well as some things you may encounter either with the IRS or with tax. If any of that interests you, then come along. I wanted to cover hobbies today. And the IRS's definition is an activity not engaged in for profit. Typically, if you run a self-employed business, you will put that income and expenses on a Schedule C on your tax return. You are able to take losses that go against any income that you have generated. So having a business loss can be beneficial to you in the tax sense. Sometimes people do have activities that they don't care if they have losses because they either enjoy doing them or they appreciate the losses because it helps offset other taxable income they have. And so they will continue to do this activity even though they have years and years and years of losses. After a couple of years, the IRS does often get suspicious and may ask about it. The IRS does have a set of something like 7-ish criteria where they look at those things and it helps them determine if something might be a hobby versus a legitimate business. And some of these things include, how long has this loss been going on? Have you ever had a profit in the past that you have reported on your tax return? If you had a profit, then you would have paid tax on it. And if you just want to have the losses to offset other income, then you may not have had a profit. They also look at, is this an activity that you may gain enjoyment from? Like, does this have to do with horses, for instance? Some people really enjoy horses, whereas if you worked in, sewage management, that is less likely to be a hobby versus something to do with animals. What type of expenses go into this business? That type of thing. They also look at if you keep a second set of books for this business versus, another business that you may have. Like, do you actually keep contemporaneous books and records, have a separate bank account? Do you actually treat it like a business? The definition of hobby to the IRS is very subjective. So you can argue your position if they determine it's a hobby. You can take it to appeals, you can take it to tax court, and you can argue that, in fact, it is engaged in with the intent of a profit, and you don't think that their position is sound to turn it into a hobby. I ended up turning several businesses into a hobby during my audits, and I don't think even one of them went agreed. They all disagreed. And either then took it to appeals or they just wanted to make sure the record showed that they disagreed with my position. And all of that's perfectly fine. Sometimes there's just a disagreement on the intent, but it is hard to tell at times when you have a series of losses. And one example I had was a dentist who also grew grass on his farm in order to sell it for hay, but he never had a profit. He kept buying equipment and building fences and clearing out the property and improving upon it, but he never actually had a profit. He had losses all the time because he kept spending all this money he earned at his dental job to, work on this property when it's a passive activity because all you're doing is growing grass that he then pays someone else to harvest for him. So I determined it was a hobby. He disagreed. The IRS doesn't allow losses on your tax return when it comes to hobbies. So it is not in your best interest to have something considered a hobby. Never use the word hobby with your tax preparer. Just say, this is my side business or other business. And especially if you're being audited, never use the word hobby. To the IRS or the state, they'll jump on that word. So basically you get to report your income and certain expenses you will be able to deduct up to the extent of the losses, but you may not get full or any benefit from those. So Definitely try to have a profit every once in a while, so that you can, that's really substantial proof that you engaged in it for a profit. Try to have a good backup on why you think that is not considered a hobby. And if the IRS ever does come and asking you to prove these things, you may be in trouble if you don't fit any of their criteria of proving that it is intended for profit.